Final Fantasy XVI is a game that on paper sounded perfect to me. The complex storytelling, heartwarming and lovable characters with social commentary that the Final Fantasy series is known for, and the intense action spectacle layered combat from Devil May Cry. What's not to love? Devil May Cry is a franchise I hold dearly. Growing up playing it alongside my older cousins gave me so many memories I look back on fondly today, and for sure moulded some of my tastes in gaming for a long time. Unfortunately, as much as Final Fantasy XVI succeeds in telling a compelling story with lovable characters, it just as much fails when it comes to pacing, shallow combat encounters, bad quest design, and some odd choices mixed in with it all. Final Fantasy XVI seems to have the fanbase split, and usually has most players feeling very mixed. By no means is Final Fantasy XVI a bad game. I enjoyed my time with it, but I definitely at times felt like I was dragging myself through the game, especially when the story slows to a crawl. Some people would say that this is the most divisive Final Fantasy to release, but I feel that tends to change with each entry. Final Fantasy XIII and XV both shared these experiences. Forewarning before we get into the plot, I played this game to basically 100% completion, including DLCs in a very short amount of time, quite a while back. So, my recollection might not be the best, and that's probably also why some of my gripes with the game even exist. If I played this in a more measured way, I'd probably have less complaints. But I do love to complain. With that said, here's why it's hard loving Final Fantasy XVI. Final Fantasy XVI is set in the world of Alstia, home to towering hunks of crystal known as mother crystals, but to me and you, they're giant ring pops. Tasty. The mother crystals have been used for the development of civilization over thousands of years, due to the crystals granting people the ability to use magic. Kingdoms naturally built up over time around these towering crystals. For a small subsection of the population, it is possible to draw energy known as Aether from within themselves. Aether acts like the life force of the planet and is not replenishable. This allows them to cast magic through themselves rather than through the crystals. These people are known as bearers. Non-bearers have to use crystals in order to channel Aether and cast magic. The crystals take this Aether from the surrounding area. When the Aether dries up in a specific area, the land within that area begins to decay and rot, no longer suitable for people to live in. Now, this seems to be an allegory for climate change amongst other things, matching the themes of Final Fantasy VII. There's that social commentary I mentioned earlier. As a result of these revelations, bearers were enslaved due to crystals being a precious resource, in pretty much every case being worked to death. When a bearer uses too much magic, their body runs out of Aether and will eventually turn to stone. There is no cure or way to save them from this. The only way to prevent this is to limit magic use. Unfortunately, most bearers aren't afforded this luxury. There are some naturally born magic users who aren't forced into slavery, depending on what kingdom you're in. These people are known as dominants. In most cases, the reason for dominants not being forced into slavery is due to their extreme power, but in some cases it seems that some of the dominants are manipulated from a young age or swayed with power and titles. The exception lies with the Iron Kingdom specifically. The Iron Kingdom specifically sees dominants as unclean and beneath them. Dominants are extraordinarily powerful bearers who are the human vessel for beings or spirits known as icons. Icons are typical Final Fantasy summons you have seen throughout the series. These include Phoenix, Garuda, Ifrit, Rama, Titan, Bahamut, Shiva, and Odin. Moving on from that, I'd like you to meet Joshua Rosfield. Next in line to the throne of Rosaria, Joshua is a polite and compassionate young boy who serves as the dominant of fire, Phoenix. Joshua has an older brother called Clive, who has dedicated himself to being Joshua's shield, his protector. Clive himself wasn't born with the ability to use magic, but thanks to a blessing from Joshua, he is able to use some of the Phoenix's power. Also by Joshua's side is Jill Warwick. Jill's background seems a bit unclear in regards to her early years. It's just said that she is originally from the Northern Territories. However, once the Mother Crystal in her kingdom fell and the Blight took over, causing the land to become uninhabitable, she was taken as a political prisoner. This isn't to say she's treated poorly though. She seems to be raised alongside the brothers as more of a sister than anything else. The most important thing to take away from this is that the three of them are childhood friends and care very deeply about each other. They even had a wolf pup they were raising together named Torgal. There are hints from the beginning of this game that Clive carries stronger feelings for Jill, but does not confess them. Clive most importantly takes his duty to his brother very seriously, and does everything he can to support him. Alongside Clive and Joshua are his parents, their mother Annabella Rosfield and their father Elwyn Rosfield. Annabella has this weird obsession with bloodlines and titles, so much so when the Phoenix rejected Clive, her firstborn son, and chose Joshua instead as their dominant, Annabella began to view Clive as a failure. Annabella outright treats Clive with contempt and disdain over this, even though it's something he can't control. You'll notice in the beginning of the game, she often fails to acknowledge his presence and actively talks down to him and about him, either to his face or to Elwyn. In comparison, she outright coddles Joshua, and even scolds him for going to watch Clive train within the castle walls. Whilst it's clear Elwyn doesn't agree with the way she speaks of Clive and Jill, on occasion calling Jill a savage, he doesn't seem to make a real effort to stop Annabella. Elwyn does however encourage all of the kids and is very nurturing to them. As of late, Annabella and Elwyn have been in disagreement, arguing frequently. Annabella vehemently disagrees with many of Elwyn's actions and his morals. Eventually, Annabella becomes so frustrated with her situation, she betrays the family, defecting to the Holy Sambrek Empire under the condition that she and Joshua may live in high status in the new world the Empire wanted to create. This all comes to a head on the night the Rosfields travel to Phoenix Gate to prepare for an upcoming battle with the Iron Kingdom. The Holy Empire ambushes the Rosfields at Phoenix Gate, setting fire to half the castle the Rosfields were staying in. In all of the chaos, and in an effort to protect his son, Archduke Elwyn is murdered right in front of Joshua. Little dude was in the splash zone, and unfortunately he did get wet. The trauma from this causes Joshua to lose control of his powers, and he assumes the full form of his dominant. Clive notices this and attempts to calm his brother. Whilst doing this, he spots a hooded figure in the distance who then assumes his own dominant form as another dominant of fire, Ifrit. This shouldn't really be possible as there can only be one dominant of fire at any given time, or so it was thought anyway. Ifrit and Phoenix, Joshua, then begin to duke it out. Whilst Joshua is competent and does well to hold off Ifrit, especially for him and his powers being so young, it seems that it is not enough and Ifrit overwhelms Joshua. Clive is unable to help, forced to watch his brother be beaten and torn to shreds, as he stands there helpless, begging for Ifrit to stop. With one final attack, the area is devastated, leaving Clive as the only survivor of the attack. Annabella and some Holy Empire knights find Clive amongst the rubble. Annabella with speed tells the knights to execute him. She does however stop them before they can go through with this. Possibly, for the first time ever, she actually compliments Clive and admits he was a good soldier and that they should put him to work, inducting him into the Holy Empire as a branded soldier. With a large chunk of their forces destroyed and their leading fighters and royalty gone, the kingdom of Rosario was invaded by the Iron Kingdom, who either killed or enslaved those that remained. Years later, 13 years to be exact, Clive is sent out on a mission within a squad to eliminate the Iron Kingdom's dominant, Shiva. Clive is 100% willing to go through with this until he notices the dominant looks familiar. Clive realizes it's Jill, his childhood friend. Upon this revelation, he is no longer able to go through with the mission and chooses then and there to defect from the Empire, fighting his squad mates to protect Jill. Clive unfortunately finds himself surrounded by Iron Kingdom soldiers. They want their dominant back, and they're not going to rest until they get her. Fortunately, everyone's favourite Final Fantasy character shows up and saves the day, Cid, the dominant of Rama. Cid is kind of a branded freedom fighter. The current state of the world is unacceptable to him. He fights to liberate Branded wherever and however he can, giving them a new home at a place called the Hideaway, a place for Branded to live safely and in harmony with each other. Clive is asked to help around the Hideaway and to join Cid's cause. Whilst Clive is reluctant and realistically can now only focus on the idea of revenge and seeking out that hooded figure who killed his brother, he does proceed to help around the Hideaway and any bearers he runs into, if only to help him get intel on where he might be able to find this mysterious figure. And that's the basic premise to the game's plot. Seems like the setup for a classic revenge story, and whilst it is, it definitely develops into something more grand with larger surrounding themes that you'd expect from a series like Final Fantasy. The issue is, as mentioned earlier, the game is hampered by poor pacing and a world that has too much background information amongst other things. But we're just focusing on things that hamper the enjoyment of the story for now. There's so much to learn about the world that provides a core understanding into more of the inner workings of the world and the factions and characters within this world. Fortunately, the developers did have some foresight and saw this might be a problem and implemented a feature known as active time lore. You can push a button during most cutscenes and it will bring up a screen which you can navigate to learn various bits of key information about characters within that scene or elements of the world mentioned or shown within that scene. I think this is a nifty little feature, and more games should offer something like this. It especially comes in handy if you spent some time away from the game and maybe need a refresher, but also just handy to clarify concepts that maybe haven't been explained too well by the game itself. This issue didn't bother me too much as I still managed to enjoy the overall story and characters, but my understanding and enjoyment for the story was enriched that much more when I actually understood more about the world, and it's a very rich world indeed. In spite of the shortcomings of how Final Fantasy XVI presents its world and sometimes its story, I still love how it all shakes out. This entry has some of my favourite characters in the Final Fantasy series as a whole, so let's talk about them. You play as Clive Rosfield, a smoking hot jack dude with sultry tones to boot. No homo, of course. I'm wearing socks. Clive is probably one of my favourite Final Fantasy protagonists. From a young age, Clive carries himself with honour. He's kind and compassionate and determined to succeed in his duty to serve his kingdom and protect his brother, earning respect from fellow soldiers and the people, as well as sympathy for how his mother treats him. Clive, though never subjected to what the Branded had to go through, prior to the events at Phoenix Gate anyway, felt great empathy for them and hated the way they were treated. Clive doesn't just have a Gorilla Grip coochie, he also has a Gorilla Grip heart. Aww. Clive has consistent growth throughout the game. The time skips in the story really aid his development. Clive spends the first hour or two of the game focused on revenge. He must kill whoever took his brother from him. Until, shock horror, he finds out it was himself who killed his brother. I will say, I don't think I've come across anyone who didn't see this red herring coming a mile away. It's very clear that Clive is Ifrit. So it felt a bit weird that they did this, but it's not something that sticks around for a long time, so I'll let it slide. The hooded figure who appeared before Clive I assume is Ultima, there to awaken Clive's power. When we join a grown-up Clive journeying with Cid, he fights Benedicta and awakens his dominant powers again, this time keeping his memories from the battle. Clive realizes he was the one who took his own brother. Not only his brother, but also partially responsible for deaths of other people he loved and cared for. In an earlier section of the game, you come across Hannah Murdoch, the wife to the man who trained you in the opening of the game. During Clive's initial transformation into Ifrit, he burned him alive, completely eviscerating him. Not intentionally, of course, but Clive can't help but drown in guilt. Clive even expresses wanting to die. He can't bear to live with this feeling.
13 years of killing. 13 years without the faintest glimmer of hope. It was only Joshua that kept me going. I swore that I would avenge his death. That I would kill his killer. That was the only thing that gave my life any meaning. But if it was me who killed Joshua and Murdoch and all the others, then why the hell am I still breathing?
I ask myself the same. When I fought, hundreds died. There were so many bodies, so many lives cut short in their prime. That day in Dalmacia, I wanted to join them. I wanted it all to end. I couldn't bear it anymore. If living meant being that, better to be just another body.
And it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. Without the incredible performance Ben Starr gives throughout the game, I think the plot and Clive as a character would fall flat, but Ben just brings it to life. Every time Clive is going through extreme emotions, you can really feel it through the performance. As someone who was grieving whilst playing through this game, I really gravitated towards these performances. The display of raw emotion that grief and self-hatred can cause spoke to me. I think these performances even helped me process my own grief in some ways. Jill is quiet and calm, but firm in her beliefs, with unwavering loyalty. And you can see this with every action she takes. Jill constantly puts others first, even to her own detriment.
Jeder macht die Eile. What alvation naukin aladskaliast.
Let this be the end?
Jill's past mirrors Clive's in a lot of ways. Though not formally royalty, she lived alongside the Rossfields. And whilst Clive, Joshua and Elwyn treated her with respect and dignity, Annabella gave Jill the same treatment she gave Clive, viewing Jill with disdain and disgust, referring to her as a savage. Jill suffered through enslavement just as Clive did, and to a worse degree as her powers awoke early and she was used for the war almost constantly until Clive meets her again, 13 years after Rosaria fell. For a lot of the game, if not all of it, she's portrayed as less capable than some of the other dominants. And that's not because she herself is weak, but because the crystal's curse has already started to take hold. It's taking a massive toll on her, and through it all she's still there to help Clive and save the world, a world that treats them as less than. Throughout the game, Jill and the other characters serve as an anchor to keep Clive grounded, but it doesn't feel like it comes at the cost of her own development. Jill is her fully own formed character with her own convictions, thoughts and feelings about the situation they face. I will say it was a bit of an eye roller when she got kidnapped for a second time, but country girls make do, am I right fellas? I think the way Clive and Jill's experiences mirror really aids the natural progression of their relationship. The guilt they both share for having been the cause of so many deaths, the weight of wanting to carve out a new life for their people. They both come so far as characters throughout the story, and I think it's a testament to how much this game really cares about its characters. I love how openly Clive and Jill love each other and how they display that love. I love how they both show deep care for their friends. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. Anyway, Torgal is a rare breed of frostwolf from the Northern Territories and was found as a pup, presumably at the same time Jill became a ward for the Rossfields. Torgal was gifted to Clive and Joshua and was raised by Clive and Joshua and Jill. Torgal seemed to be particularly inseparable from Jill. It's later found out that Torgal is a descendant of Fenrir, a royal hound to the Queen. The Queen was believed to be a dominant of Shiva. Even though Torgal is an animal, there are still plenty of ways the game manages to endear him just as much as they do the human characters. Torgal isn't just your regular rare breed of frostwolf though. Torgal has powers. Take a look.
It's a bloody wolf!
You guys gotta give it up for my boy, he looks pretty fucking cool. It's speculated that Torgal's latent powers manifested because he spent a great amount of time around Jill and Clive, who are both dominants. Cid isn't originally from Valstia. Before he arrived in Valstia, he had settled in the kingdom of Waloed for some time. After awakening as the dominant of Rama, Cid was quickly recruited by Barnabas. Once Cid had earned Barnabas' trust, he was granted the position of Lord Commander. Whilst working under Barnabas, Cid saved a 15-year-old Benedicta, an escaped slave who had recently awoken as the dominant of Garuda. Cid eventually defected from Barnabas' empire, after him and Barnabas had a falling out. It's not clearly stated what this falling out was, but I have to assume Cid found out about Barnabas' dedication to Ultima. When Cid left, he unfortunately cut all ties with anyone there, including Benedicta. Cid's friend Otto had a son who was discovered to be a bearer. Cid knows how bearers are treated in this world, and without missing a beat, he started a movement to save bearers from being enslaved and became the freedom fighter we all know and love today. Cid serves as a mentor for the early parts of the game. Before Clive is ready to stand on his own and champion the cause Cid has been fighting for. He's the catalyst for the main plot. Without Cid, Clive wouldn't have seen a future beyond hate and vengeance, and beyond self-pity and shame. Clive wouldn't have seen the potential for a world where his past and his comrades' past didn't have to be anyone else's future. Jill would still be enslaved and used as a weapon. She wouldn't have been reunited with Clive. She wouldn't have found hope again just as Clive had. Cid shows Clive and Jill what it would mean to have free will. Joshua Rossfield. Joshua is the dominant of Phoenix and heir to Rosaria. He's also Clive's younger brother. We can see that from a young age, Joshua has always been a compassionate person who cares for those around him. Clive has been dedicated to protecting Joshua his entire life, and then beating himself over the head with his guilt for the remainder of his life when his brother is sent to the Shadow Realm. When an older Joshua joins us in the story, we find out that ultimately, it's he who has been protecting Clive, shielding him from a powerful, alien evil. Joshua, in an effort to protect Clive, has kept himself hidden, only revealing himself when he had no other way of protecting his brother. During Clive's first encounter with Ultima, Joshua steps in and traps Ultima within his own body. I really adored the way Clive and Joshua's conversations and relationship played out. Joshua realizes that Clive has this terrible habit of taking things on by himself and becoming a martyr for a cause. Clive's unending guilt and shame tied to the slaughter of his people and his failure to protect his brother push him further and further into this spiral. Thankfully, Joshua, along with Jill, Sid, Gav, and of course our resident good boy, Torgal, are there to try and share that weight, that responsibility that Clive seems to think is just for him. So much so, Joshua even clocks him in the jaw for it, in frustration when Clive can't help but, once again, position himself as a sacrificial lamb. Barnabas serves as the antithesis of what our heroes are fighting for: free will. Barnabas has completely given up on humanity. He believes free will is the root cause of all evil in the world. Which is often how I feel when I've spent 3 hours trying to decide what I want to eat. I don't need choice, I need instructions. Barnabas' sole purpose is to carry out the will of a large evil in the story, someone who he deems to be a god. Barnabas from a young age was raised in a religion known as the Circle of Malice, an ancient religion that worshipped Ultima. As a result of the blight at the age of 6 years old, Barnabas and his mother fled their home. Fortunately, they were taken in by people of the same faith. Sadly, their good fortune wouldn't last long. Barnabas' mother was killed by a rival religious group. Now, fun fact about Barnabas. Barnabas is a descendant of the Motes of Darkness, a people whose heritage was bound to Odin. When his mother was killed, Barnabas' dominant powers awoke, and he became the dominant of Odin. His mother's passing seems to have triggered a deep, seething hatred for humanity. After awakening to his power, Barnabas united the warring tribes of Ash under him, as well as quelling unrest within the area, uniting the land under him as the Kingdom of Waloed. After seeing what Barnabas had accomplished, Ultima approached him. The very being his people had been worshipping for hundreds of years appears to him. With Barnabas' deep hatred for humanity already present, it's not hard to see why Barnabas was so easily swayed by Ultima. Plagued by his mother's death, he aligns himself with Ultima's belief that humanity's evil stems from free will. Barnabas devoted himself to Ultima, with Ultima making him Akashic in return, but still able to maintain his sanity and appearance unlike regular Akashic. Benedicta was born to a poor family who sold her off at the age of 6 to a wealthy family as a servant. When Benedicta was 15, she was almost physically beaten to death after being falsely accused of stealing. The trauma and near-death experience caused her to awaken her dominant powers. Sid saved Benedicta from bandits hunting her after she had awoken to the power of Garuda, and recruited her into Barnabas' army. After Sid left, Benedicta held a deep resentment toward him. She felt abandoned and lost, though she still held on to the wing pendant Sid had gifted her, indicating she still held a place for him in her heart. Benedicta has a real focus on loyalty and how important that is to her. She can't understand why Sid left because in her eyes, Barnabas has given her everything. Benedicta now has a purpose, she has power, she has status, she has a second name. That's powerful. Benedicta has effectively been raised into this from her teenage years. And although it's clear she dislikes how bearers are treated, Benedicta chooses to serve a cause that ultimately continues to cause harm to bearers.
I wonder that you summoned us at all. Have you so little faith in your own men? It was the Dalmex who drove back the Crusaders in the Battle of the Twin Realms, was it not? Or am I mistaken?
As you can see, when Benedicta notices the bearer being used just to pour a simple glass of water, a look of disgust appears on her face. She then goes out of her way to make this man feel small and weak. It makes sense that Benedicta would feel this way. She used to be a defenseless bearer and now she wields a mighty power, but uses it in service of someone who would see the human race and bearers doomed to servitude. And it's kind of devastating that there is a reality where she joined up with Sid and could be making a real difference and a better world for the bearers. As mentioned earlier though, Benedicta values loyalty above anything else, and to break that is to break who she is at her very core. With Benedicta's rise in the ranks, later becoming the head of Royal Intelligences, she was deployed to make contact with Hugo Kupka, the dominant of Titan who held wealth and power within a rival kingdom, known as the Dalmekian Republic. Benedicta began a relationship with Hugo, however you can tell that she doesn't really value or respect him. Hugo is simply a means to an end, a mission. From what I understand, Benedicta and Sid were lovers once upon a time, which is why the abandonment and betrayal from Sid feels so intense for Benedicta, referring to Sid as a snake. It's very clear this relationship meant a lot to Benedicta. Benedicta's resentment for Sid is central to her character, and is just another layer as to why loyalty is so important to her, why she never lets herself trust or be vulnerable. Benedicta only allows this for her king and her king's cause, which I guess is Ultimate's cause. A lot of moving parts to the villain hierarchy in this game. Benedicta actually reminds me of Cinder from the show Ruby, a girl from a poor background who was sold off to a rich family for slave labor, treated poorly and routinely abused. Both Benedicta and Cinder has someone who betrays their trust, and now in their adult life they are constantly angling for power, and determined to flaunt theirs whenever they have the chance. Cinder definitely doesn't value loyalty the way Benedicta does, but the angling for power and background is spot on, I think. Hugo Kupka. Hugo looks exactly what you would expect the dominant of Titan to look like. He's a towering, imposing, muscular being. And this is also reflected in his personality for the most part. He's cruel, he's brash, he often uses brute force to get what he wants, and he uses his superior might to crush those in his way. Dude is so tough, even with both hands cut off, he smashes the ground throwing a tantrum, shaking the very foundation of the area surrounding him. Hugo's voice is even what I'd expect it to be. Calm and reassured, but commanding authority. Just how I would expect Titan to act. This, however, does waver every now and then. His love for Benedicta shows the cracks in the solid front he displays. Although Benedicta clearly doesn't care for him the same way, on multiple occasions trash-talking him behind his back, making fun of his grandiose claims, Hugo wholeheartedly loves her, and Benedicta's death becomes a big motivation for him to fall in line with Barnabas, even if it's through pure manipulation. After Clive defeats Benedicta, Barnabas shows up to claim the body. He dismembers Benedicta and sends the head to Hugo. This devastates Hugo and he's brought to tears.
Tell me, who did this, or I'll see you suffer the same fate.
The man who delivered the coffin said... He said Sid paid him.
Ah! I let you run amok with the rest of your rats, and this is how you repay me? Find out where he is. Ah! I'll crush him, flay him, rip out his heart, him and all his filthy brood. Send every last one of them to hell. Out. No!
Yes, my lord.
Benedicta.
The head is made to seem as if it came from Sid rather than Barnabas. Hugo swears revenge upon Sid and destroys the hideaway while Sid, Jill and Clive are on a mission together. Dion is gay.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin'
Muggles.
gay. Do you understand that? Serious crap.
Oh dear, that's not good. I feel the need to say the S word now.
I don't know. I guess I'm not woke. Okay, fine. You win with your gay stuff. That's what you want, right? To win.
Dion is the dominant of Bahamut, and also prince to the Holy Sambrek Empire. This is a man who truly cares about his people and has always fought for them. He's courageous and kind, and cares for the innocent. Unfortunately, his father would rather see him used like an AC-130. Womp womp. Whilst Dion followed orders from his father, he believed he was helping his kingdom and people to live and thrive. Dion eventually learns that his father is being manipulated by his little brother, who Dion has a burning hatred for. Dion and Clive mirror each other quite a bit, but also have some striking differences. Clive adores his younger brother, whereas Dion is furious that Annabella has stolen his right to be the next ruler, with her entitlement and son. Dion is unfortunately swayed by Ultima to kill his father. The resulting shock and guilt sends Dion into an uncontrollable rage. Dion destroys the capital city using his icon form. Once Dion comes to his senses, he is left with the guilt of slaughtering his people and destroying his home, much like Clive had to. They also have the fortune of sharing a gem of a woman for a mother, Annabella. Annabella's relationship with Dion echoes that of Clive. She views Dion as a failure and views him with disdain, mocking Dion as the son of a whore. I'm happy we got a gay character in a mainline Final Fantasy game. I feel like this has been a long time coming. Personally, I think I wanted to see more of that, and for a few other reasons I'm left wanting a little more from this aspect of Dion. I think most importantly though, they wrote a character first, and quite frankly I was shocked that they included anything like this at all. It was a really pleasant surprise, and I hope they continue to add more things like this into their mainline games. Other people being included in stories is always better. Now, for the main villain, Ultima. I really love Ultima. I think they knocked it out of the park with him. Probably one of my favourite antagonists in the FF series to date. Ultima is a collective of entities who fled from their world in order to survive, after draining the environment of the life energy needed to sustain their existence. At one point, the Ultima species were the ultimate life form. The collective created the human race in order to create the perfect vessel for them to use the spell, Raise. This would destroy humanity and create a new world for the revived Ultima species. When we're first introduced to Ultima, he is there to claim his vessel, Clive. When Clive refuses, Ultima is simply baffled. You see, when Ultima created the human race, they did not create them with free will in mind. This was something they developed. Ultima, ultimately, doesn't understand the human experience. He doesn't understand empathy, sadness, happiness, anger, grief. So it can't comprehend why Clive and his comrades fight so hard against them. Even as Ultima takes his last breath, I don't know if he actually breathes, he questions Clive as to why he fought for this freedom, for free will.
Tell me, what do you imagine will befall this world now that you have gained your precious freedom?
I honestly don't know. But I doubt it will be pretty. A sorry tale of sin and suffering, hardship and pain.
And it was for this that you fought so fiercely? Why?
It's who we are. We fight. We survive. We endure. We don't need a reason. We are imperfect creatures. When we stumble, we reach for a shoulder to lean on. When we fall, we stand back up. We see the horizon, ever out of reach, and still we march on. Certain the answers lie just beyond it. Because that is our way.
Ultima is described as otherworldly, and I think that fits. Alien is also another good word. The grey skin, the vacant stare, the extra arms, the bulging veins. Dude can fly, fucking sweet. He's imposing, he makes the cast and the player feel uneasy. Whenever you hear him speaking, it's always monotone and matter of fact. I think they did a great job with Ultima, and every time he was on screen, I ate it up. From introduction to the final confrontation, I loved him. Now, when I heard this game had DMC devs on staff, I gotta say I got pretty excited. Final Fantasy XVI steps apart from other titles in the series by being the first combo action game, or maybe even Spectacle Fire. I will say when it comes to combat, I was disappointed when I found out I couldn't play as other party members, and whilst I hope in future installments they go back to letting us play as the whole party, I understand why they made the choice for this entry. I just wasn't that big a fan of it. What I do like about the combat system is that it leans into player expression. There are no set rules, no elemental weaknesses. If you want to use a certain icon, you can, and you won't be punished for it. The only time you'll be punished is because you're not using that icon correctly. This is why when you see gameplay from other people or creators, a lot of them are using entirely different setups, depending on where they are in the game, and I really enjoy that. I am unfortunately a creature of habit and stuck to the base 3 icons. I think I tried Leviathan once and Bahamut once. That's not to say they aren't fun, they look fun. I just didn't want to put time in to learn their quirks, and I found a rotation that worked for me. And that's the beauty and also the ugly of this combat. When you find something that works for you, it probably will through the whole game. The downside of that is you never try any of the other icons, which is kind of what happened to me. I like the icon system, I just wish we could use more at once. Sure, cycling through them feels clunky at first, but as you get used to it, I'm sure a fourth one would have been just fine. I think this would probably help the combat feel a little more layered, since base combos are limited to 4 hits and then a blast in between those hits. Though to be fair, I'm not sure if this is optimal for base attacks and probably changes a little with different icons. I also think we could use more base combos that don't involve icon attacks, as just spamming square with no other form of variation besides holding R2 and hitting another button did get old. I quickly found myself settling into a pattern, especially since combat in this game is pretty easy. I can't remember a fight in this game where I was required to do anything different besides hit enemy a lot. Overall, I think the combat is responsive, snappy and fun. Dodging feels good. There isn't much in the way of combos, however with each icon's set of abilities you can learn to combo and layer them in a way that works for you. It's fun, I just wish there was more of it. And seeing Clive slide all over the place when I precision dodge is just kind of...
Lord have mercy, I'm about to bust!
Yup!
You know what I mean, fellas? His poor knees. His poor knees. I have a love-hate relationship with these types of boss fights in the game. They look epic and the scale of them is immense. Probably has some of the biggest boss fights in this series, at least scale-wise. And for this I love them. However, I did find some of these fights to be super repetitive and overstay their welcome. The Lost Titan fight, for example, went on so long, I genuinely felt tired from boredom, since the mechanics of the boss fight just rinsed and repeated the entire time. The scale of it was immense and the spectacle of it was great, but that's about where my praise ends, especially for this fight. Some of the other boss fights handle it better and have different phases that feel at least a little more different than the Lost Titans did. These icon fights feel like a way better attempt at the kaiju fights that Bayonetta 3 attempted, which tracks since Square had Platinum and KH Studios come in to help with the fights. Fuck me, that line was kicking my ass, holy shit. It's reported that each fight took 10 to 12 months to complete. It's clear to me that along with a very talented voice cast and some nice cutscenes thrown in here and there, these icon fights ate a lot of the budget, and it shows in other parts of the game. Standout boss fights for myself are against Hugo, Barnabas and Ultima. It's not to say that these fights did anything incredibly different to others in the game, it's more that they did the same things but with better pacing and enjoyment from myself. But everyone is different and they may have other takes. For example, I think the fight between Clive and Hugo is probably one of the best in the game. Now the Clive and Hugo fight isn't strictly an icon battle. Yes, they're both dominants, but they don't go into their icon forms. However, I still really like it, so I'm going to talk about it. This is one of my favourite fights, simply because of the build-up around it. Hugo has been wanting to get his hands on Sid ever since he found out Benedicta had been killed. Clive reveals to Hugo right before they fight that it was Clive who killed Benedicta, just to rub salt in the wound. For me, this adds to Hugo's character again. He acts out of rage and anger, but behind it all is sadness, grief, maybe even regret that his beloved is gone. The only thing he can think to do is avenge her, also mirroring some of Clive's sentiments. Now, there are a few cutscenes in this game that are breathtaking and once again share the same kind of spectacle that the icon fights do. However, from what I recall, they are few and far between, and most of the story progression is done through in-game cutscenes that are kind of just like dialogue boxes scrolling. A lot of this is voiced, but it's still kind of boring. As much as I did enjoy the voice acting, my ADHD monkey brain needs more stimulation. I need stuff going on. I will also note that whilst playing this game, and this was prior to me knowing who was directing the game / producing it, I kept saying to people, this game feels like an MMO. This game feels like an MMO. This is the way an MMO cutscene would play out. Look at the framing, look at the angles. Guys, I thought I was going insane. However, I felt very vindicated when I also saw that others were sharing this opinion, and also when I finally found out who was in charge of the game. Now, this isn't a knock against Yoshi P or Hiroshi Takai. I've actually been working my way through 14 and enjoying it here and there. Some of it is a drag, mostly the early parts of the game, but it's enjoyable and I'm making steady progress. One of the biggest tells for me though is sometimes 14 would lore drop with cutscenes that just involved explaining maps and territory. So a big map would come on screen and they would be like, here's this place, this is what they do in their history. And that's kind of how the lore drop would go. This, bar for bar, started happening in 16 multiple times. 16 straight up jacking 14's flow, and it's not a good one. Anytime a map would come up, I would straight up enter a comatose state. Shit had me catatonic, had me emptying my mind so much I was unlocking my 4th avatar chakra, opening my 3rd eye, discovering forbidden jutsu that not even Hokages or Orochimaru could grasp. Listen, I like 14 and I like 16, but this shit is abysmal, please stop it. Every time I heard Vivian speak, I was dismayed. Now, this next statement is going to be very reductive, so bear with me on this journey, but the more and more I play 14, the more I look back on 16 and I think, this really is just a single player expansion for 14. All jokes aside, the lore is similar enough that you can tell the creators of 14 really love the world they built and wanted to bring some of that into 16 with them, and I think for the most part it's actually aided me in enjoying 14 a lot more than I would have, and also aided in building the world of 16. As much as I might dislike how they handle some of their cutscenes and how they deliver lore and story, at least for certain parts of the game and certain cutscenes, I want to stress that not all of the game is like this and that a lot of it is, at least to me, well done. I really enjoy the story of this game and the themes and the relationships between the characters, so I just want to stress I'm not shitting on the story. I really like the story. I just am not a fan of the way they deliver it sometimes. If any of you had a similar experience with 16 or 14, please let me know. I can't be the only one. A lot of the quests in this game boil down to go to point A, talk, go to point B, kill things, back to point A to talk again. Sometimes the quests are just you running back and forth between an NPC with no combat at all. The game's overall structure usually has you go through some linear levels with some big story beats and big reveals, and then gives you a ton of downtime, much like how 14 structures its own story, whilst leaving big character and world building moments entirely to optional side content, and it's just really baffling. Toward the end of the game, there are 3 side quests you can go on for each of your party members, to make them a permanent party member for a while before we reach the end of the game. These quests all provide really big character moments for your party, and they are, for some reason, completely optional and missable. Why? Jill's side quest seems kind of irrelevant at first. You set off to find a patch of flowers that remind Jill of happier times from her youth. The quest itself doesn't involve much gameplay and still has the same A to B quest design, but what results is a beautiful moment between 2 characters that just adds to their relationship.
Before we broke camp, the morning after the storm, do you know what I did?
No? What?
I slipped away from my governess to climb the tor. And from there I saw a sea of petals, all reaching for the sun. And I realized that no matter how terrible the night, dawn would always come. That you would always come for me. And you have. Again and again.
Where do you see us? When all this is over?
Not here, though. I think I've outgrown the twins. After everything we've been through, the realm just seems so small. I'll need some space to spread my wings.
Then that's what you'll have, and I'll stop at nothing to see that you do.
Thank you, Clive. For this, the flowers, for everything. It's exactly what I needed. You are my treasure.
Jill declares Clive as her treasure. Now in my books, that's a pretty big declaration about someone. Why is this an optional side quest? I get it's not the most crucial piece of information, but definitely more relevant than a lot of other things I've been running around doing at a brisk pace in hub areas. Then there's the Torgal side quest, which is even more infuriating because Torgal, being a wolf, doesn't really get to say much, so this quest feels extra important because it actually expresses Torgal's character and how deep Clive and Torgal's bond runs despite being separated for so long. You're led to a treehouse Clive and Torgal used to visit in their youth. It's shown, partially through memories and also through pieces of armor and equipment that Torgal kept bringing here throughout the years. Torgal never gave up looking for his friend. He never gave up looking for Clive, which by the way is so fucking endearing, and I did cry, and why would they hide this away in a side quest? The last side quest I'll talk about today is with Joshua. He's informed that items were recovered from the ruins of his home. A letter was found written by Elwyn Rossfield. Clive and Joshua set off to find out what's in that letter. We get a nice little lore drop about Elwyn and how he was a good-hearted leader, one that was very much needed in Balestier. The letter contained his aims and goals for after Phoenix Gate. Elwyn wished for the full emancipation of bearers, but Elwyn didn't want to stop there. He wanted to build hospices to care for those afflicted with the curse, to build schools and universities to study technology outside of magic. Elwyn had the foresight nobody else seemed to have. He knew the blight was spreading and saw this as the only action to take to preserve the world. Elwyn wanted to see man and bearer stand side by side as equals, and to have a better world for future generations. The brothers are also given a keepsake that should have been passed down from their father, matching armbands. These are meant to include a heartstone, however due to Elwyn's passing, these were not completed. Clive and Joshua set out to retrieve the stone. After successfully obtaining the stone, we return and we are given a bit more lore about Elwyn.
Heartstone is harder and more enduring than garnet, or even ruby. It symbolizes unwavering will and devotion, and the graven vines encircling the stone represent the unbreakable bonds between you.
It's a message. Father knew we had enemies both inside and outside the duchy. Enemies who would thwart his vision. Only with unwavering devotion would it ever be realized.
And only if we stood together, as Phoenix and Shield, as brothers in arms. Only then might those enemies be overcome.
Indeed. His Grace knew the enormity of the task he would entrust to you, his heirs. But this was more than just a message. It was a promise. That he would always be with you.
Thank you, Lady Goditha.
Elwyn knew his goals were probably not achievable in his lifetime, but he knew it could be done. He wished for his sons to continue his mission. Elwyn believed this could only be achieved if Clive and Joshua stood together as brothers, as Phoenix and Shield. For the final part of this quest, Clive and Joshua travel to Hawk's Cry Cliff to visit their father's memorial. When the boys reach the memorial, we're treated to a heartfelt scene where the boys reminisce about the kind of man their father was. A kind, considerate man who wanted to create a world where all could live equally. Clive in particular shows real admiration for his father. I think the scene must have been cathartic for Ben Starr. Ben has spoken about channeling the passing of his father and the grief from it for this role. Clive and Joshua vowed to try and be like their father more and more every day. To strive for their goals, to never stop fighting for what they believe in, just as he did. Before Clive and Joshua depart, Joshua requests to his father's spirit that Elwyn watch over the boys as they follow in his footsteps. Joshua walks on ahead, and as Clive leaves, we catch a glimpse of Elwyn's spirit. Clive feels it and turns around. Unfortunately, he doesn't see Elwyn, but he knows, and vows to not let his father down. This quest not only solidifies the bond between Clive and Joshua, but demonstrates the love and admiration they had for Elwyn. I'm certain a lot of people who played and finished the game did not see these very endearing moments, and I'm kind of pissed about it. I really enjoy the outcome of these few side quests, or the story they told and how they helped to build the world up, but it's few and far between, and even then the quest design is still lacking. Unfortunately, Final Fantasy XVI doesn't just share cutscene stylings with 14, but also quest structure. I think the MMO structure of the quest design that 16 borrows from 14 hurts the game overall. Not by a lot. Everything surrounding it related to the plot is sound, and I enjoy it, but sometimes the game did feel incredibly slow. And there were also some odd choices game design wise that I think contributed to this. The first odd choice being that there is no sprint button, you just start sprinting after 5 seconds of full speed running. And I could deal with that probably, but this next thing kind of drove me a little bit insane. The sprint function doesn't work in hub areas. question, Clive. Are you fucking kidding me? Please, Clive, baby, sweetie, I know this is your rest time, but I need you to haul ass, buddy. This game has way too many side quests for us to be moving this fucking slow. The last thing, which I have mentioned earlier, is bad quest design. I think especially those quests that make you run back and forth between NPCs, to be fair to the game, I think this would be a non-issue if you were just focusing on the main quest. But I did everything in this game, all at once, in the space of about a week and a half. If you play games like I do, and you want to do everything in the game, your eye might start to twitch when you enter a hub area for the 500th time and slow down to a crawl. I'm gonna frickin' lose it! Okay, we're back. Sorry about that, everyone. We're okay. It is decided that 3 people will go to face Ultima in the final mission: Clive, Joshua, and Dion. As we say our final goodbye, the game takes the time to reaffirm its themes: free will, to live and to die on one's own terms. We all choose our own paths. Believe in yours. This is what Jill says to Clive before he leaves to confront Ultima. It's simple, but amplifies that this is his choice, and he must follow through with full conviction. Because that's what it means to live and die on your own terms. Final mission drops you right into the heat of things with a purely cinematic first encounter with Ultima. The spectacle is insane, and if there's one thing I will give this game credit for, it's the spectacle of the big cutscenes and the set pieces within the game. They're beautiful and very well choreographed. The 3 icons combine their power to unleash a tri-disaster in Ultima. Unfortunately, this doesn't go as planned, and Clive is wounded. Whilst Joshua attends to his brother's wounds, Dion takes it upon himself to hold off Ultima. In an effort to protect the brothers, Dion sacrifices himself. Dion never wanted to be remembered, to be forgiven, to be martyred. He just wanted to make amends for the wrongs he committed. Dion has always been an honourable, noble character, and he stayed that way until the end. Dying with honour in knowing he fought for something he believed in, a better world. Not a fan of the whole kill your gays trope, but I'll take the win that we even got a prominent gay character who isn't just a walking caricature. Poor Terry, womp. As the brothers approach the final confrontation, Ultima reveals to them that they had actually been aiding the Ultima race the entire time. Destroying the mother crystals had actually been freeing parts of the species trapped within the mother crystals. This is probably why every time a crystal fell, Clive would hear it cry out to him loudly. As this is explained to us, the Ultima that Joshua had trapped within himself earlier in the game springs free, reuniting with the host and leaving Joshua with a lethal wound. Joshua uses his remaining time to speak to his brother, to reassure him this is the right path, that Clive's ability to listen to the people around him and lead, that his will, courage, and his determination make him stronger than Ultima, and finally to thank him for being his shield, his protector, his brother. It hits hard when you have a sibling, and I can't imagine what it was like for anyone who's ever lost a sibling playing this. The game has done such a phenomenal job of displaying sibling love, and that's why the scenes with Clive and Joshua hit so hard for me.
I see it now. Why you will never become Ultima's vessel. I don't care. Just hold on. Listen to me, Clive. You remember the murals? People once knew that Ultima was their god. That he created them. And they worshipped him, prayed to him, looked to him for guidance. In vain, for he did not listen, did not acknowledge our will, and so we strayed from his path to forge one of our own. So absorbed was he in his own desires, so driven by his own will alone, that he shunned the one thing that could have made him truly powerful. Faith. The same faith people now place in you. Faith that you will fulfill their dream, Sid's dream, of creating a better world for us. Faith that you will follow in Father's footsteps and save those who need saving most. Faith that you will answer Jill's plea to save yourself. The difference is, Clive, that you chose to listen, and that is what has steeled our bonds. Bonds that helped you stand firm when Ultima's pull was at its strongest. His power may be absolute, but so is ours. And so will yours be. With my light in your heart, not even a god might stop us.
Joshua! Don't do it, you'll...
Enough, Clive. My body is too far gone. If the wound does not take me, the curse will. I have always been proud to call you my shield. But now, it is the world that needs you. Thank you, Clive, for being my brother.
This was a beautiful scene. Grief is a funny thing, and although I haven't lost a sibling, I did lose my nan not long before I picked this game up. She was like a parent to me. She basically raised me, she lived with us until I was into my late teens, and then on and off throughout. I can't find where I read this, but Ben Starr had mentioned that he used the grief of his father passing to channel the emotions for scenes like this, and you can really tell. It feels so authentic. The rage, the anger, the sadness, the hopelessness in his voice sometimes. I say this because this scene really put me through it. I had to walk away and calm down. Something about being able to have that one last goodbye with a loved one. I've never had that, and I was so glad Clive and Joshua got to have that. To me, this game is about free will and choosing how to live and doing that with purpose. But it's also a story about love and sacrifice. With our final goodbye, Clive jumps into battle fighting the most powerful version of Ultima we've ever encountered. What I like about this fight is the difference in how Ultima refers to the Icon's abilities and how Clive does. Ultima simply declares the Icons as their elements or abilities, for example calling Titan Earth, whereas Clive refers to them as their actual Icon names. Not only this, but Clive hears the voices of his comrades as he fights for everyone's future. He can hear them in the back of his mind cheering him on. It definitely is a friendship is magic type beat, but I still really like it. I think it fits the purpose of the story perfectly, echoing Clive's character growth. Clive finally understands he isn't alone. He doesn't have to bear responsibility all by himself like he thought he had to. He may be the only one doing the actual fighting, but everyone is supporting him. I thought this was a really nice way to add character development even through gameplay at the very end of the game, and a testament to just how strong the human spirit really is. Clive throughout the game has constantly had setbacks and been beaten down again and again. He's been made to question whether their cause is just or right, yet through it all he powers through with the help of his loved ones, highlighting just how strong his fighting spirit is. He may have almost thrown in the towel, but Clive chose to keep getting back up over and over again, just like his father did. Clive eventually lands the final blow, defeating Ultima. With that, we take a moment to look back on the brothers' relationship as Clive holds Joshua one more time. And that little wink Clive gives Joshua at the end never fails to make me smile. Clive takes the time to reassure his brother even in the midst of a ceremony. The wink to me is Clive saying, "I will always have your back, you've got this." With Clive thinking back on these moments with Joshua, I wonder, although we hope Clive has grown and learned from his journey the whole game, does he feel like he failed to protect his brother again? Clive, out of respect for his brother, uses the phoenix flames Joshua blessed him with to heal Joshua's wounds. Unfortunately, Clive can't do more than that. The Phoenix's flames cannot bring someone back to life, and Clive's mission isn't over. We need to rid this world of magic. Though there may be trepidation about this, it has to be done to rid the world of blight. With the power of the Phoenix and other icons combined, Clive makes the final decision to rid this world of magic and bring forth a new era. Clive lays on the shoreline, drained of energy after using his powers to rid the world of magic, his power slowly leaving him. Unfortunately, with that burst of magic, the crystal's curse has reared its ugly head. Clive's hand is turning to stone. Clive stares up at the moon thinking of Jill. Although they might not be together now, or cannot be together, he hopes she is able to see the world that they were fighting for. As Jill stares up at the moon, she sees the star of Meteor fade. Jill believes this to mean Clive is no longer with us. She runs out onto the balcony followed by Torgal in devastation. They both let out heartbreaking cries. The star of Meteor is considered a messenger to the moon. A custom is to wish upon the moon your most heartfelt desires. Jill in her youth wished upon the star to protect Clive. When she sees this star vanish, she takes that as a confirmation that he is no longer with us.
Do you remember that night on the balcony? When we looked up at the moon? I said a prayer to Meteor and that prayer was answered. You came back to me. The heavens must have a plan for us.
Remembering in this moment how many people gave their lives for this new world. Not only the brothers, but Dion, Sid, and so many others who believed in this cause. For anybody to be able to decide their own fate, to choose how they live and die on their own terms, to have dreams and aspirations beyond survival. This feels like a perfect ending. Clive gave his all to achieve his dream, and a dream so many others shared. Other people gave their lives, but Clive being Clive would always bear the full brunt. Once a shield, always a shield. It's a bittersweet ending if you take it at face value. A portion of the fanbase share the theory that Clive didn't succumb to the crystal's curse and that he lives. I also believe this to be the case. You see, it was possible to still live as the affliction took hold. One of Sid's arms was almost fully stone. Even Jill had been partially affected by the crystal's curse and was able to continue living. We only ever see Clive's hand turn to stone, so I have reason to believe Clive lives. Not only that, but I think the game ending with Clive yet again sacrificing himself would be such a disservice to the story and character progression of Clive. The game is incredibly intentional with how they develop Clive. Clive's whole progression through this journey is learning to love himself and to not be a martyr, to not take everything on his shoulders and constantly make sacrifices he shouldn't have to make. And as this Redditor said, to walk back on this is shitting on Clive's character. And I wholeheartedly agree. Everyone in Clive's life tries to hammer home to him he is more than a soldier. He is more than a sacrificial lamb. He deserves to reap the benefits of this fight, to have a chance at a happy ever after just like everyone else. And the game spends a long time telling you this. So it's my belief that Clive lives and returns to Jill, keeping their promise to each other that they will save each other. We're treated to a small post-credit cutscene of two boys who resemble Clive and Joshua in their youth, playing together and helping their mother with chores. The game shows payoff for Clive's sacrifice in the simplest way, with one of the boys starting a fire without the aid of magic. I'm pretty sure Clive wrote the book that appears in the post-credits cutscene, taking on Joshua's name when penning the book to honor him, detailing his adventure, and I think it's a testament to the effort he and his comrades went through. Icons and magic are all relegated to being nothing but a fairy tale. Clive and his friends succeeded. Now when it comes to the post-credit cutscene, at first I thought it was Clive and Joshua reincarnated, finally getting to live a happy life as siblings. They even have a pet pup who kind of looks like Torgal. And as sweet as that idea is, I don't think that's the case. I think this is a family that are maybe descendants of Clive, or it could just even be an unrelated family. What I like about this scene most is just how uncomplicated their lives are, how simple and happy they seem. Two siblings, playing and helping their mother around the house, no slavery, no self-hatred, no royal kingdoms, no politics, no blight, no magic, just them. Earlier in the video, I had mentioned Final Fantasy loves some social commentary, and they attempted to tackle a few things in this story, one of them being climate change. Like I mentioned earlier, it reminds me of Final Fantasy VII in that regard, a call to sacrifice the ease and comfort of technology, or in this case magic, in order to live in and maintain a healthier world. I kind of adore how simple this ending is and how beautiful it is. I think even in the real world, a lot of us wish for a simpler time. A time where everything wasn't so divisive and we could go back to just being happy and spending time with the ones we love. When I started writing this video, the original title was Why I Want to Love Final Fantasy XVI, but can't. And I think through making this video, I realized how much I really enjoyed this game, and the story it told. And despite its shortcomings, I really fell in love with it, leading me to my current title, It's Hard Loving Final Fantasy 16. And whilst that might be a little hyperbolic for me, because I do actually really enjoy the game, I need to get you guys to click somehow. To be real, a lot of my enjoyment isn't even to do with the gameplay. It's to do with the themes and the storytelling, the characters and the relationships they build throughout the game. I've seen people say modern Final Fantasy isn't Final Fantasy anymore, and whilst I can see why they might be put off by modern Final Fantasy, I really urge you to give it more of a chance. Final Fantasy is so much more than a combat system or a genre. Final Fantasy is its characters, its world, its music, its ideas and themes. I wasn't a huge fan of the series growing up, and I still have a lot of catching up to do. Hell, my first Final Fantasy was 13. Spoiler, I think people were harsher on that game than they should have been, so maybe I'll talk about that at some point. My point is, I played both older and newer games, and I think Final Fantasy still holds up really well, and will for many years to come. The fact they mix it up with every mainline entry is one of my favourite things about the series, even if I don't always enjoy or have minor problems with the changes. If you're on the fence about modern Final Fantasy or just Final Fantasy 16, I urge you to give it a chance. Buy it on sale, use Family Share on Steam, borrow a friend's copy, just give it a go. Hey guys, thank you for watching. Whilst you're here, I'd really appreciate if you clicked on the subscribe button, drop me a like, be much appreciated, would mean the world to me. Also drop a comment, whether that's about Final Fantasy, the series, or Final Fantasy 16, or just any other topics you want me to dig into or talk about. Also, whilst you're here, drop by my Twitch channel, link in bio. Love seeing new faces pop up, love chatting with new people. Come by, come have fun, it's always a good vibe. This is the first video I've done in this genre, so I'd really appreciate any feedback, any tips that you might have for me, and just thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Catch you later.